Hello, everyone. JJ here. Today we're going to be going through chapters 10 through 16 of Exodus. And if you're just joining along, we are going through the Chronological Study Bible. And at least for the first books here in the Old Testament, any Bible actually will work. But what's going to happen in this Chronological Study Bible, because the books are here ordered historically, we're going to be taking the books Genesis through Revelation in order as they show up historically. So if you email me at becauseloveneverfails@gmail.com, send me your address and I'll send the Bible to you. Also, I just want to point out again the Bereans, and so when Paul in the New Testament was speaking to the Bereans in northern Greece, he talked about them. I mean, as ones who search out the scriptures, right? They don't just take it for what it is, and that's the essence of what we're doing: is going through the scripture together, Genesis through Revelation, 10 pages a day, 143 days to really get this overall view of the Bible and to seek the scriptures out for ourselves. I know I've looked at some past videos. I've made mistakes. Hopefully, you've found those. You've recognized those, and it's encouraging you to get into your own studies and just continue here to find out who the God of the Bible is. And so, with that said, we're going to get into the plagues. When we left off yesterday, I'd kind of left off so we could just kind of just look at the plagues as a whole, and then step through them one by one to make it to chapter 16 today. And in reviewing the plagues, a couple things to point out is one, all the plagues are aimed at the false gods of Egypt, right? So again, God is a God of history. God is a God of people, of creation, of all of this. Yet, anytime you find something true, there's always going to be the false, right? So, as we've seen the journey of Abraham and then his sons and Isaac and Jacob, and even now here through Moses, as they've come through these lands, we have the God of the Bible, and and the claim of, hey, this is the one true God, right? And that's what we're discovering. But yet, in the context of this, again, where there's the true, there's also the false. Think about all the perfumes, obsession. How many different forms of obsession? Like obsession, right? Anyway, a lot could be said there. But these people are seeing in the midst of all these lands other gods, right? So the one true God is having to show himself and separate himself from this and show himself all powerful. And indeed, that's what the plagues are aimed at. They're aimed at all these false gods of Egypt to show the Egyptians that he is Lord, and to also to show his people that's being developed out of this, the people of Israel, that he is the one true God as well. Also, something here is when you take the Bible as a whole, there is no reprobation doctrine in the Bible. And what I mean by that is if you look at Pharaoh, there's language here that says, God hardened Pharaoh's heart, right? And so again, there is no reprobation doctrine. So here's kind of the thing to look at in this, and what I was looking at as I was going along, is that the Pharaoh has a chance for all of this. There are these 10 plagues that are taking place, and every time Moses is summoning Pharaoh, telling him what's going to happen, then it happens, and after it happens, Pharaoh in some shape or form repents of sorts and says, "Okay, great, do what it is that you request to some degree, and just take this plague away." And then it's taken away, and then it's kind of this back and forth, right? And so we see this along the way, that Pharaoh's constantly hardening his heart, and it's really something to consider in your own life as well, right? It's something to consider. You know, um, so if you're getting these tugs, if you're experiencing God, if God is calling to you, it's really ultimately your choice. We're given the choice. You're either going to answer or you're not. And what we have to be careful of is this potential hardening as we go along, right? And just ultimately become calloused to this summoning. We're not really willing to humble ourselves, so And really the key is to humble yourself, right? But Pharaoh never does. All the way to the end, he's hardened ultimately to the point of destruction. Um, Also here, Moses, as we look through the plagues, remember in the beginning when Moses was called out, he's kind of reasoning with God, going, "Look, I'm slow of tongue, and this, I'm really not the one." So we see Moses viewing himself in his inadequacies, right? He's viewing himself in his inadequacies, and God even gives grace to that and says, "Look, if you don't want to speak, fine. Take Aaron with you. Let Aaron be your spokesperson." And that is what we see. And as we see the plagues, we also get to see Moses' transition, because as they're going to request of Pharaoh, sequentially here as we move along, in the first three plagues, um, in the first three, we see Aaron actually performing what there is to perform in these plagues. So Aaron is here in the first three, and then let's see here. Yeah, um, the first three, but then in the fourth plague, we see the transition with Moses. Now with Moses stepping in and fulfilling on what God's command was. Also in these plagues, it looks as if the first three, let's just go through them real quick sequentially. So the first one was the waters become blood. Well, the magicians of Egypt were able to do the same thing, so no one was real impressed. The second plague was the frogs. Again, the magicians were able to do the same thing, and no one was really impressed. And then the third plague, the lice, this is where the magicians are stumped. The magicians of Egypt are stumped, and from then on out, it is acknowledged as the finger of God. And in chapter 8, looking back, it says 8 verse 18. Now the magicians so worked with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice on man and beast. Then the magician said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." Also, I want to look at, as we move through each one sequentially, what Pharaoh's response was. So again, the first plague, water becomes blood. Pharaoh's not moved. The second plague with the frogs, Pharaoh's response to Moses, and again, remember the request here, as you read, the request was, "Hey, Moses is ultimately asking Pharaoh to let the people go. Let us go. Let us go away from here for a moment. So that we can sacrifice to God. And everyone. He wants this whole developing nation of Israel to go, men, women, children, all of their livestock. And so the first plague, again, not moved. Second plague with the frogs, Pharaoh's response is, "Hey, go." But then soon as the frogs are removed through the prayer, if you will, of Moses, Pharaoh doesn't allow them to go. So go, and then there's a lie. It doesn't happen. And then with the third plague, the lice, no go. There's no movement there. With the fourth plague, with the flies, Pharaoh says, "Go, but not too far." So in other words, like stay kind of within the vicinity. And Moses is saying to Pharaoh, "No way." Because when we sacrifice with our livestock, this is considered abomination to the Egyptians. And it's gonna rise this hatred and this animosity. So nothing happens. Then with the fifth plague, the livestock are diseased. Again, this is back in chapter 9. Pharaoh's response is no go. And then with the sixth plague, the boils, no go is Pharaoh's response. And then with the seventh plague, the hail, Pharaoh says go. Then there's this intercession on Moses to remove, to stop everything, and Pharaoh lies. He doesn't allow them to go. And then now getting into chapter 10, the eighth plague with the locusts, Pharaoh says, "All right, go, but only the men." And Moses doesn't take him up on it because, again, the point is for everyone to go. All men, all women, all children, all livestock to go and worship and sacrifice unto the Lord. And then the ninth plague was darkness. And here Pharaoh says, "Go," but don't take your livestock with you. And again, this is unacceptable to Moses. And then in chapter 11, there's an announcement here of the coming of this last plague, which is the death of the firstborn. So it's announced unto Pharaoh by Moses, and with this announcement, also we begin to see these articles of silver. So right at the beginning of chapters 11, speak now in the hearing of the people, and let every man ask from his neighbor and every woman from her neighbor articles of silver and articles of gold. Now, articles, coins were not invented at this time, and coins really weren't invented until around 625 BC, and we're floating right now between 1500 to 1200 BC. But there's a statement here, one of these little side notes, there was a necklace buried with one of the Egyptian pharaohs about 991 BC that weighed more than 42 pounds. So the Israelite people are getting these articles of gold and silver from the Egyptians. And what this speaks to, if remember back in chapter 15 of Genesis that we went over, chapter 15 of Genesis, verse 12 says, Now when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and behold, horror and great darkness fell upon him. Then he said to Abram, Know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them for 400 years. Well, hey, that's exactly where we're at right now in Exodus. And also, the nation whom they serve, I will judge. That's what's going on right now. The nation's being judged. Afterward, they shall come out with great possessions. Now, as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace, and you shall be buried at a good old age. So Abraham wasn't going to see this, but he was told about it. You know, in this dream, he was given this prophecy in a dream of what was going to take place, and right now we're seeing this take place here in Exodus. Okay. So the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn. We see all of the firstborn, even Pharaoh's firstborn, everyone in Egypt, even the livestock, killed by let's see here. Sorry. So the Lord will pass through and strike the Egyptians. So the Lord comes through and kills all the firstborn. And there's this instruction given to Moses and to give to the Israelites, and it's to take a flock, firstborn from the goats or the sheep, and with this sacrifice with the blood, to put this blood over the doorposts and along the lintels of the door, so that the Spirit of the Lord comes through and the firstborn are being killed. Basically it's going to pass over, and this is where we get the institution of the Passover, which is still observed today with the Jewish people. So the Lord passes over because he sees the blood. So we're starting to see this pointing to a sacrifice, which Jesus will ultimately be the ultimate sacrifice. So this is pointing to some of that. In chapter 13, the firstborn being consecrated. This was a command from the Lord. You can read about that in chapter 13. And then in chapter 14, after the death of the firstborn, Pharaoh and all of Pharaoh's people are like, just go, get out of here, right? Go. There's this huge wailing going up in Egypt, the crying for the death of these firstborns. And so they go. So there's this passing of the Red Sea. And on the map, as they leave, they're going out of Goshen through this area. And then the Red Sea would be the northern part of the Gulf of Suez, which was still part of the Red Sea. They pass through on this northern side and on further south. And when you're reading that, at first, I always thought, when I think of the Red Sea, I thought it happened like that. But there's really a night that passes in this separation of these camps, which is really kind of cool. So and this wind came, and it actually happened over the night that the sea was separated. And then chapter 15, the Song of Moses, just in this celebration. And then in chapter 16, the Israelites are grumbling. They need food, and God gives them food in manna and quail. All right, guys. God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.